Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. In this episode, we're going to be discussing a recent film called The Lodge, which is credited as 2019, but I mean, for our purposes, we'll count it as 2020, given when it actually became available to everyone. So, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. This is a film about a soon-to-be stepmom who is stranded in a lodge with her soon-to-be stepchildren, in a very awkward situation without the father, who obviously connects everyone, and they end up stranded there during a snowstorm and must kind of survive. And obviously you're thinking, where's the horror element here, outside of maybe some survival issues? It's more psychological, it's a slow burn, it's kind of, it falls into a lot of categories. It's one of these things where, as I was watching the first 10 minutes of the movie, I was like, do I even know what this is about? Because the movie was starting, and I'm like, this is all catching me by surprise. But so as I said, we'll start spoiler free. Yeah. So Tim, what did you what did you make of this? What did you make of The Lodge?
Well, I mean, I've been dying to talk about it because I did see it last year at Beyond Fest, and I have some thoughts. It's very strange because I would say I love like 80% of this movie. It is like a quiet, slow burn, and I really enjoy it. And I think there's I had like some legitimate like surprises and some like jumps. Like there's like something in the beginning that like when I first saw it, really surprised me. And
I think I know what you're talking about because I wasn't expecting it either.
And again, it's hard to talk without spoilers, but I would just say I like the direction, I like the performances, I like the atmosphere, I like the way it looks, I like the weird trippy stuff that's doing. And then about, I don't know, like what, 75-80% into the movie, you find something out about what's happening, and I absolutely hate it. I hate where the story goes. I think it's so dumb that I don't know, it makes me kind of feel weird. Like I'm like, well, I like most of the movie, but by the end the story is so stupid to me that I don't know how much I can like it, you know what I mean?
This is interesting, Tim. This is interesting for a number of reasons. Because I really liked the opening chunk, right? Because it was surprising, it was tense, there was an awkwardness to everything. It was kind of in the same way that Hereditary had that awkward like social horror where just the situation with like people talking to each other after something big happens is like really like unnerving and really hard to sort of like watch. It's kind of like the horror movie version of The Office, and what I mean by that is it's the cringe of it, right? But instead of it being this funny stupid thing that Michael Scott's doing, it's this like, oh my god, like how can people even continue with this conversation? It's chilling. But anyway, so and the movie gets going, and I think it's really well directed. The direction, especially in that first 30 minutes, is like so on point with everything.
Totally.
And not that it gets worse or anything, but just because that's what I was really enjoying what the story was doing. And I actually wasn't as in love with the middle of the movie. The middle of the movie, it kind of like it felt like it wasn't. Oh, how do I put this? I felt like what it was doing with kind of like, oh, what's going on here kind of thing, like the mystery of it felt a little bit, I don't know, forced to me, or like it wasn't committing completely to it, and there was something just kind of off about it. Like it wasn't necessarily like, I didn't necessarily like the idea that there was ideas being brought up in the movie that felt disingenuous to me, where I didn't believe for a second when certain ideas were being proposed, and I was just kind of like, I don't buy this. There's something else going on here. And what's funny is that you said you didn't like it once they kind of revealed something about what was going on. And for me, that actually made it better. For me, I was like, oh, okay, right, this is more interesting again to me. And I do have a read in the ending where I don't know if it'll make you like it anymore, but the ending works more for me than the middle does, which I think is interesting. So, which is why it's fascinating that you came in saying, no, I like 80% of this and don't like the last 20%, because I would say I love the first 30%, I'm kind of middling on the
Mhm.
middle percent, and then I don't love the ending as much as I do the opening, but I do like it more than the middle for sure.
Yeah, I just like, and I guess like to be fair to that stuff, it's just the story aspect of it. I just don't really like where the story goes, because I do think it is still like, you know, like the direction and everything like is still good, and like um you know, like I like the setting and the atmosphere, like that never changes at any point in the movie. I just, man, I'll be honest, I think it's dumb. I think it's dumb once you find out um you know, like you know what, again, it's like so hard to talk about what's spoiling, but
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess once you kind of find like the big reveal uh about what's going on, it's so stupid to me, and it's just one of those like logistical things that like once you know it, it's you kind of go back and you're like, well, wait you're gonna tell me that, you know, this happened and this makes sense or whatever, but I mean, we'll get into it, but I like it doesn't make me hate the entire movie, because again, there's like enough, you know, like you said, tension and like social horror, and you know, and again, like I love like a snowy setting, and there's some really like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful shots when they're outside and stuff like that. So so it's not like I hate the movie or I think it's trash. I just um really wish they went in like a different direction with the story.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't expect us to come down kind of on fairly different sides to this. Which is it's
Uh,
interesting. We both really like the start, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
we kind of very much veer. I imagine we veer once they actually get to the lodge itself. That's kind of where the veering I think
Mhm.
happens. Uh, and then we are completely. It's almost like if you imagine like a diagram, right? So we're both sort of in sync like this, and then we sort of veer, and then we do this thing where we cross over at the end.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I again, it's hard to talk about a lot of the movie without spoilers. So in the spoiler-free section, maybe a little bit shorter on this one, but I think what
And then
surprised me is the opening in like because Alicia Silverstone's got a part in this movie, and
yep.
I didn't know she was in this. I was surprised when I saw her, and I was surprised with like how her story plays out in the opening section of the film. It does some surprising things. I don't even want to spoil it, even though it's the opening 10 minutes. I don't want to say what it is
Yeah.
because it's a genuinely good moment. So you know, I think the direction is really on point. It does this really smart thing where it kind of it actually hides the like arguably the main character for like a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the movie where Grace, who is the the young stepmom who's or soon to be stepmom who's dating the dad who's going to spend this Christmas vacation with them at the lodge. But of course the dad has to go back to work for a couple of days and he'll meet them, later in the week. Like it actually hides like we get they talk about her and we see like her silhouette at one point, but it hides her, and even when the first time we meet her from behind, and it's sort of like it
Yeah.
makes a big deal out of it, and it really makes it feel. I think from the kids' perspective, like how this is like this other force that's coming into their lives that they have no control over, and maybe captures that. And I mean, I never had like a parents who divorced and had to deal with like a step parent or anything like that, or meeting a step parent, but I imagine this really captured kind of the just this thing you can't control, and obviously as an adult I sympathize with the parents and trying to like move forward and trying to have a happy life, but at the same time that this really kind of gets across the fear of the kid and just like I don't want this new person in my life. What is this? Like I was happy before and all of a sudden I'm going through this hell because you decided you wanted this younger like woman, like
Yeah.
all these things. So
and I think all the performances are pretty great. Like
oh yeah, yeah.
both of the kids are really good. And the I forget who it is that plays Grace, but yeah, she's great. Um,
Riley Coe or Keough, I don't know how you say her last name, but yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure if she was in anything else. I don't think I was
Uh,
super
sh-
familiar with her.
she's been in a few things. She was in. I know she was in Under the Silver Lake, which I've not seen. Uh,
Oh, I just watched that.
uh, she
Okay.
she was in It Comes at Night, which we did, and she had a
Oh,
small
right.
part in Mad Max Fury Road. So she's been popping up
Oh,
in
okay.
things for
It
a while.
she seemed kind of familiar, but yeah, I couldn't pinpoint her. But no, I think she was great, and like you really get her frustration, and at first I thought it was gonna be more from the kid's point of view, but yeah, she basically kind of becomes the main character, and yeah, it's like, you really feel like the frustration with her, but then like, yeah, you can also, feel like the fear, like become like afraid of her, and like, yeah, there's a lot of, it's definitely like an emotion filled movie.
Hmm.
um which, yeah, yeah, sometimes it's, very cringy, sometimes it's you almost want to be like a little
Yeah,
hopeful, like, oh, maybe
and
they're getting along a little better.
not cringy in a bad way, cringy in like when it should be cringy. It's cringy
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
what they're going for the moment. And you mentioned the kids there. The kids are actually surprisingly really good. They're good.
Yeah.
And they have a lot to do, especially in the first half. There's a lot of like complex reactions they have to give about not only big things that happen to them, but the relationship with this new woman and like how they deal with it, how they cope with it. Like, there's a lot of things there that could come off as hokey, could come off as a lot of things based on just the actors playing the children, but they do a pretty good job. So,
And
uh,
then I feel like a lot of movies, yeah, try to kind of do this type of thing, and like to compare themselves to Hereditary, but I do think this is one of the better examples of like, like I can see the similarities to Hereditary with like the family drama, and
mhm.
even like the motif of the dollhouse, and everything, but
Yeah, it's hard not.
not in a rip off way, but like, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard not to think of. It's hard not to think of Hereditary when you get the dollhouse stuff. It's not a lot. It's not as much
Yeah.
of it in this as Hereditary, but the daughter does have a dollhouse, and every so often it'll sort of like show moments or foreshadow moments with what's going on in the dollhouse. So yeah, that is definitely elements there. The sound design as well. It's very quiet for the most part. There's two
Yeah.
noticeable moments where it gets absurdly loud, and I'll talk about them in spoilers. But and they're both music based. Uh, Bizarrely, like it's not like there's loud jump noises. It's more. There's just like two bits with music that just sound ridiculously loud. One's just when they're just she's walking through the house and like music's playing and the soundtrack. But there's also another moment where she gracefully bangs on a couple of piano keys, and not only is it really loud, but they sound like kind of demented. Like they sound like they're going through like some sort of weird demonic like filter.
Yeah.
They linger in this really really unsettling way. So I don't know. But other than that, it's a very quiet movie for the most part. It's not a lot of ruckus in the soundtrack.
Yeah. And then I forget. Did you like Goodnight Mommy?
Good Night, Mommy. Did I say Good Night, Mommy? Is that the
Oh,
German film?
I believe so. Yeah, but I think it's the same director as this.
Oh, is it? Well, there's two
I think
directors
so.
here. It's
Yeah.
Severin, Fiala, and Veronika, Franz. Did they both direct Good Night, Mommy?
That I'm not sure. But I think there's at least some connection between those movies.
Yeah. I did see Good Night, Mommy, and that was another one where I thought it was fairly well directed, but I remember thinking probably the opposite of this one, where I felt about Good Night, Mommy what you feel about this, where I didn't really like what it did with the twisting and stuff at the end.
Interesting. Yeah.
Did you like the twist in that?
I remember. I don't think I had a strong opinion for it. Like I don't think I necessarily like loved it, but I don't think that I was like hating against it. I don't know if I went back and watch it now, if I'd maybe have a different opinion or not, but
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I think it's interesting to kind of compare them.
Yeah, I think I remember with that one. My problem was is that I felt it was almost too obvious what the thing was doing the whole time. Once I got to a
Sure.
certain point, but I remember being very underwhelmed by the ending of that movie. Uh, it's funny because it's almost become a subgenre now because of things like Hereditary and The Babadook and just other these horror filmmakers who are doing what I guess I'll call the serious drama horror movies where they're going for more of a like we're taking this very seriously. We're not going to be hokey. We're not going to be cheesy. We want to make something that maybe has a lot of subtext and talks about something. And I feel like we've seen movies that have tried to do this and fail. And sometimes when those movies fail, it's actually a harder hit than just a goofy movie that's not that good. Like I'm thinking of something like The Wind, where we weren't really into that and we had a lot of disappointments.
Yeah.
But that was trying to be a serious, slow burn horror movie. But when it failed to do so, it was actually more tedious to get through because it's at least if something's trying to be silly, it can be kind of goofy and we'll laugh at it and whatever. It's it's just I guess it's a bigger risk, I suppose. Higher risk, higher reward. I suppose is the way I think about it. But Yeah. I mean, the movie overall, though, I mean, because we've sort of talked about portions of it. I mean, I would say overall, I liked the movie.
Yeah.
But I did have some kind of portions in the middle where I was a little bit out of it. I felt like it was, I don't know, it was almost like the more surreal elements in the middle were kind of just not working for me. I just felt kind of weird about them.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, they worked for me. I actually like the the kind of the horror aspects of it. And I don't want to sound too negative about it, because overall I do like the movie. Again, it's just I have that one big specific complaint, but it doesn't ruin it for me. I still, and this was the second time I watched it. It still worked for me. I just kind of wish some different choices were made. But like I like the quietness of it. Again, the kind of this is a more of a serious slow burn kind of movie, which sometimes I'm not always in love with, but it did work for me in this one. And again, I really like, I feel like we don't get a ton of horror movies in the snow, but I mean I really love the sets, that setting. Like I love the eeriness of being trapped and snowed in, and there's no one around, and yeah, I can't, it's harder to get in touch and reach out with people and just leave and stuff. Like I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. So I think we will go into spoilers. I feel like at this point we have to kind of venture in, because it's just too much to talk about that's behind
Yeah.
the spoiler wall. So I will take this time though to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Cindy Palacios, Tyler Hess, David Shaw, Alison M. Fordyce, Zammer Jammer, and Board Now. Thank you to all you guys. They are $20 above patrons, but you don't have to be a $20 patron. You can support us for as little as $1 per month, and you get a bonus exclusive episode of Screams After Midnight every single month. There's a back catalogue now of about, I don't know. I always ballpark it. I don't know how right I am, but I think it's like 16, 17 episodes now.
We've been doing it for over a year, so at the very least.
So yeah, there's a whole back catalogue there you can go check out for just $1 per month. At the $5 tier, of course, though, as well, you get early access to all the episodes by a day, and you get to vote on an episode once per month. So go and have a look and see if you want to support everything we do and keep all the content coming, and so on and so on. So go have a look. So yeah, we'll get into some spoilers then, full spoilers for The Lodge. So what's funny is that when I got to the end of this movie, I would actually describe this, and again, this is like a spoiler way of describing it, but I would describe this as like The Shining, but if Danny basically intentionally tried to make Jack Nicholson go mad. Right?
Okay, I can see that.
Where it's the kid's fault. The kid's intentionally, it's not a ghost or anything like that. It's just the kid. The kid is making him go mad. Because so one of the bits of backstory that I did not know about going into this movie that's kind of brought up fairly early on is that Grace has this weird history that the reason why their dad even met her is because their dad, what's his name here? Richard. Yeah, the actor's name's also Richard. That's pretty funny. But he did like a book. He did a book on like cults, and
because I think he's like a therapist or something.
And Grace is actually the survivor of a suicide cult where her father was this like devout, cult leader who convinced the entire congress of people to commit suicide. And like the kids even find like footage. At first I thought this was on the internet. I thought, well, this is just on the internet for people to find this easily. But I think it was actually just their dad had it on his computer for research purposes. But it was like footage that Grace took of like all the dead bodies lying around with like tape over their mouth saying "sin" on them.
Yeah, because there's like a motif throughout the movie, about like religion and sinners and having to repent.
Yes, so yeah, so I guess because we should start with the start of the movie, because I like it's one of those things where I didn't recognize her at first. I'm like, this woman looks familiar. And I was like, oh, it's Alicia Silverstone. She's just she's like 20 years older than the last time I saw her or something. So that's why.
And it's a I mean, maybe she's not doing as much stuff now, but she's still like a big recognizable name for such a small part in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was doing some TV show stuff recently. Okay. She's a regular in a TV show or two, I think. So, yeah, Yeah, she's on the Babysitters Club. She's an American Woman. Yeah, she's been on a lot of TV. So she's still working. She's just somehow not in anything that we ever see. But she's there, and it really sells as like she's like depressed about her husband leaving her. She clearly didn't want that to happen, and she has to take the kids and drop them off. And Richard, he's very kind of like. It seems like okay, yeah. So he's leaving her for this younger person, but it does feel like he's trying to be as nice as possible about it as he can. He's trying to he's talking to her with a soft hand. He's try to be civil and all the rest of it. It doesn't seem like he's trying to be a dick, or go out of his way to do so.
I honestly, we don't see him throughout much of the movie, so it's hard to maybe get a firm grasp on the character. From what we get, I feel like he's one of those people who maybe is just like kind of selfish. Like he seems like nice, and I'm sure he probably thinks he's doing the right thing a lot of the times, but I don't know, like maybe part of it is though that he is more concerned about like what he wants versus like what's best for his family and his kids. But I mean, I guess maybe the opposite side of that though is like maybe the kids don't give him enough credit, like because he'll ask them to do something, they're like, no, we don't want to do that, and he's like, well, we're doing it anyway. Like because they don't want to go to the lodge with Grace and stuff. And but
I mean, the funny thing is though, at that point though, it's like because it's like I think it's easy to vilify him because okay, he's leaving his wife for a younger woman, right? That's a very easy thing to vilify someone for. But like, I mean, we don't know what the marriage is like. We don't know. I mean, maybe that's the sort of thing where he was wanting out of the marriage anyway, and if someone in a marriage is at that point, it's really sad that the other person didn't feel that way. It's really sad that she's like taking this as hard as she is. Like she doesn't want to get a divorce. She doesn't want to split up. She was happy in her marriage. She was happy with her family life.
I think the thing that makes it kind of weird is it's not just like another woman he met. It's like a woman that he was I mean, maybe I could be wrong, maybe I'm misremembering it, but I thought that part of it was that he was a therapist and that Grace was his patient.
I never necessarily got therapist and patient, but I mean, that wouldn't surprise me either. At the very least, he was studying her. He interviewed her for the purpose of his book, at the very least.
So yeah, maybe that's just what it is then. He was writing the book and she was like his the person he was interviewing. But it still, I don't know, kind of makes it feel like a little like kind of stepping across a boundary though, because
for sure I'm kind of looking at it though, like forgetting like kind of the context of who the new woman is, right? Forget like all that. When we're talking about like the kids not wanting to like do anything with her and all that, like we're at a point here where, and we'll talk about the actual death in a minute, but their mum dies, right? And like it cuts 6 months later, and clearly, I mean, it's been 6 months, so clearly he's not rushed that quickly. He's taking baby steps because it's 6 months later, and he's only just now saying, "Hey, Christmas is coming up. This, I want you to get to know, her. I'm going to marry her," and he's only just telling them because we knew he was going to do that because he tells Silverstone that, that's actually why she goes home and kills herself. And a very kind of sudden, shocking scene where she just pulls out a gun and puts it in her mouth. It was actually a really surprising moment.
Yeah, when I saw it in the theaters, it was it was really interesting to see that with a crowd because it was so like. I mean, it was a nice respectful crowd anyway, so like people were quiet before, but it's one of those scenes where it's like, you hear so many people jump and then it's just like, just stunned silence. Like again, it's very similar to like when I saw Hereditary in the theater. There's like a couple instances in that where it's like, even if it was quiet before, it gets like extra quiet. Yeah,
you can feel the quiet sort of sneak in. I get it. And we have the funeral scene and like the really sad part of that where the daughter's trying to like put this doll on the balloon because they're all releasing these black balloons up through this like the entranceway of the church has like a hole in the archway where they release balloons through, and they all release these black balloons, but the daughter's trying to tie this little doll that represents her mother to it, and because of the weight of the doll though, the balloon doesn't go up, so she has to just rip it off and the balloon goes on its own. It's this really sort of like This is very awkward. And
Yeah, that's like really like super sad. Like honestly, like I think like yeah, these kind of scenes like almost as sad as like anything from like Hereditary or like any of these movies where yeah, it's like seeing it from like the little girl's point of view is so sad, and then like yeah, I think it's like the next scene pretty close after that where she's just crying and like
and her brother,
because her mom can't go to heaven.
Yeah, her older brother comes in and lies next to her, and that's when it cuts 6 months later. And like you said earlier, the first 30 minutes of the movie is very much from the perspective of the kids. Everything's through their lens, pretty much. It's and when we get to this, they're setting up this dinner, and the dad tells them about this trip that he wants them to take, and the son's like "F you" and storms off because the son's like older, he's like 13 or something like that.
I don't think we mentioned it's the kid from It.
It is, yeah. It's the one with the stutter, right?
Yeah. He does a good job here.
He does do a good job here. He's good in this movie. So, and that's just kind of what I was getting at is like, the dad eventually comes in later and says, "Look, I really need you to try and get to know this person because she's going to be living with us." And at this point, he's going to move on with his life. He's going to have people. I mean, admittedly, I can't imagine like the thought process, like even from him, like how does he feel when his divorcing wife commits suicide because of him leaving her? Like how do you, like it kind of glosses over that, I suppose, in a way. Like you feel the awkwardness of it, but you never really necessarily get what he thinks about it, or what does even she think about it? Like does Grace, what does Grace feel about the fact that her, and or not interference necessarily, but like him leaving his wife has led to her suicide? Like how do either of them feel about that in any great scheme? And on the one hand, like they're all adults and he is free to leave his wife, like if he goes about it the right way. I mean,
I wonder though, like jumping ahead, once like Grace is totally broken and unhinged and stuff, like is that her kind of processing this? Because when she starts talking about how like we sin, and like when she sees Richard again and talking about like, oh, like we're sinners and stuff, and I wonder if maybe part of it is she's referring to like what they did in this instance. Like,
oh, well, I mean the kids clearly blame her because I mean the son Aiden like yells out it's all her fault early on in the film. And I also don't think we can also ignore the correlation here that she survived a suicide cult. She was the lone survivor of this mass amount of people who all committed suicide, and she survived. And now she's in a situation where effectively someone has committed suicide, where she's taking the person's place.
That's true. Yeah.
There's definitely a correlation there between like, oh, how have you somehow ended up being the survivor again in like a suicide incident? it's kind of a weird correlation, and I feel like the movie's doing some interesting stuff with the guilt and all that, but I think one of the things the movie's doing for me, and kind of why I like where it goes at the end, is so the big thing is that once they go to the thing, because I really like how it handles like the first time we meet her properly, because we see her like behind the stained glass at one point, and it kind of treats it like the kids have met her, but we keep not seeing her. She keeps being this sort of force that's kind of just the other person, which I think is perfect for the mood that it wants to create, because we don't we don't see her as a character for a long time. We see her as just the other woman. That's all we think of her as, because we never meet her yet. And then once we actually get to meet her and she comes in the car and the dad gets like a phone call, he's like, oh, I have to take this, and he steps out the car. She's left alone with the kids, and the tension in this scene as she's trying to make small talk with the little girl is palpable. You can feel it. It's really well directed.
Yeah.
It's super strong.
Totally. And I like that that she is actually like super nice. Like you feel bad because she's like trying so hard like throughout the movie to connect and do things with him, or like get things for him and stuff. And like it would have been like maybe easy to turn her into like some kind of a wicked stepmother, or maybe have her be like someone who's like super like vain and doesn't understand why everyone's so upset. But like you can tell that like no, she understands the situation and the tension, but she is still like trying her hardest to reach out to him.
And I think that's the thing, because we said that it transitions to her being the main character, is that I think that's why I don't just vilify the adults here, because she is trying her best. She is trying to do everything the right way now, and it is 6 months later, so it's not like they just did this the next weekend, right? It's not like they said,
That's
okay,
true.
time to meet the new mum. Like, this is your mum now. Deal with it. All right. They clearly drew this out longer because I assumed they were probably going to get married quicker before. It was, the death of the mum probably slowed it down. For the sake of the kids, for the sake of not rushing them through this transition, and like she's trying really hard. And so basically what happens is that there's a lot of awkwardness as they're together for 3 or 4 days, and then the weird thing happens where they fall asleep watching movies, and they're watching The Thing of all things.
At this point, the dad had to leave.
Yes, he leaves. She's left alone with them. There's an awkward couple of days with them. But they're not really talking to her. The son especially doesn't want to talk to her. He refuses to eat anything she makes. He's going to make his own food, things like that.
Yeah.
And she has to confront him as well because he was kind of staring at her when she was in the shower. Because I actually thought that scene was weird at first because she gets out of the shower and there's like a reasonable amount of nudity, and I was like, oh, this is weird. I didn't expect nudity in this movie. It didn't feel like that type of movie. But then when you sort of see him, kind of the impression that he's watching her, it's like, okay, now the nudity makes sense because the whole point is that she's been spied on, so we feel a bit uncomfortable. It actually makes sense in the context of the scene.
Yeah.
But she confronts him about it, so you don't want to talk to me, but you want to spy on me in the shower. And it feels like they're almost starting to like break some ground where they're watching movies together. The daughter is kind of opening up a little bit to her, and they're watching The Thing.
I do like the... Yeah, I was just going to say, I like the movie choices.
They're watching The Thing. But earlier on, I swear one of them was watching Sleepaway Camp earlier on.
Really?
It's paused, but it looks like the... I won't say what it is because it's the twist ending of that movie, but it looks like the close-up of the face screaming at the end of Sleepaway Camp. And it's paused on the TV earlier on. I could be wrong. It could just be a similar shot in another movie, but it looked like that to me. But she's not liking the horror movie. She's feeling creeped out because it's giving her flashbacks to her horrible cult past. So she's like, can we watch a different movie? And they put on Jack Frost, not the cool horror Jack Frost. They put on the Michael Keaton family friendly Jack Frost. But they all fall asleep, and when she wakes up, all the Christmas decorations she put up are gone, and she's like, this is a weird prank, guys. Like, why are you messing with me?
And it's important to note that they were cold earlier, so they brought out a space heater that runs on gas.
Yeah, and then they go to the kitchen, and all the food in the fridge is gone, and all of the clothes from her room as well as the kids' room, all of the supplies are just gone, and they're kind of stranded here. All the phones are dead. There's no battery in any of the phones. And of course, Grace naturally takes us as, okay, the kids are really messing with me. This is kind of cruel, and like, stop it right now. And she keeps trying to like talk them into like giving. But of course, a day passes and they're eating like they found like a tin of beans and like some crackers, and that's what they're eating for dinner because that's all they've got. And they're kind of stranded. There's a snowstorm outside, so they can't just walk to the nearest town because it's too far away. They don't even have their jackets, as they point out. And the middle of the film is this sort of trippy thing where gradually Grace is becoming more and more unnerved. She's having these weird flashbacks to her father and his like speeches. She at one point gets so desperate that she walks out in the snow trying to just walk. She gets like a couple of blankets and just tries to walk. And she does genuinely hallucinate where she sees like a building, like a house that's like three tiers that's like in the shape of a cross almost.
Yeah.
So there is general hallucination elements. There's a scene as well where we find out that she's been kind of sleepwalking as she's having these nightmares, and she literally, because there's a moment earlier on where before he leaves, Richard teaches her how to use the gun that he's got in a safe in the house, and she sleptwalked to the daughter's room, and she's got a gun in her hand, and she's sort of like seeing her with the tape over her mouth. She doesn't really have it, but she is genuinely hallucinating, and the kids are really scared of her at this point. But ultimately what's happening throughout all this part of the movie is that the kids, despite the fact that they've kept their poker face going, they did actually just take all the food. They clearly got up at some point. They stole all the food, all the decorations, all the clothes. They've got it hidden in some sort of like cupboard that the Grace doesn't know this there because they've been to this winter home before. They've been here with their mum, and it's basically, to me, what this story is that they look up what she was in her past at the start of the movie when they think, oh, our dad's with this crazy person, and they try to torment her, maybe in a way to make her look crazy so their dad won't want her anymore. When the dad gets back on Christmas. Because one of the things that they've done is they keep resetting the date on the clock to say January like 9th. So it's like, wait, dad was meant to be back on Christmas, and it's now like, over a week later. Like, what's going on? 2 weeks later even. And to me, what this movie is really doing is that their prejudice and assumptions about who she is, and them trying to prove what she is, turned her into exactly what they were thinking she was. Like she became the scary cult crazy person because they pushed her to it, not because she was necessarily actually going to become that on her own, or was that on her own.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, the stuff they do is intense. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so what I hate about this is I'm not necessarily against the idea of, these kids trying to drive her insane. Like, I see how that could be interesting. It's just, to me, it just feels so, like, illogical that these kids could do all this stuff. Like, all right, I get you don't like this lady, but, like, you're going to drug her, move like everything in the house. Like, it's not like, it's not like there was a few things. Like, there's a lot of stuff they had to move and hide and get rid of. And then like, to the point where they're pretending that, like, how he hung himself, like, and like making fake obituaries and stuff. It just, like, feels like too much that these kids would do it. I have a hard time grasping it.
That's the element that I kind of didn't mention there, is that once this has been going on for a while, where you're watching the movie, you're not really sure what's going on, and she's starting to freak out more. They intentionally start planting the idea that they've already died. They start doing like, and I really didn't like this portion because I was like, "What are you doing? Like, I don't really believe you for a start, and if it is that, I'm going to be annoyed." Like, it was kind of like that's kind of where I was not super into what it was doing. And I was glad that it turned out to be the case. And I don't really have a problem with the idea that they did this, because I think the idea is that they're cruel and they're preconceived, because I think you sympathize with them at the start of the movie, but they're so unwilling to kind of grow or let it go or whatever that, like, let's be honest here, it's the son who's really doing this. The little girl's too young to really be he's the ringleader, he's the one who's spearheading this. And to the point where, and I'm not entirely sure if they intentionally let the dog out so it would die, or if that was just an accident. Because when the girl comes out and starts crying and apologizing, it seems genuine, like she didn't actually mean for the dog to get out. That was an accident.
Yeah, that's the take I had as well.
Yeah, because that's kind of the point where they kind of start to confess what they've done. They're like, no, it was all fake. It wasn't real. We were just messing with you. And and we find out that they did have power. They had a generator. They just rigged it so it wouldn't be on, and that and we find out that it's not actually been that long. It's not January 9th, because we see Richard eventually he's on his way. He's trying to call them, and he's like, oh, I'll be there in a few hours. It's Christmas. I'm coming.
Yeah.
Yada yada. So this middle part of the movie, like all the stuff with her, like sleepwalking and like remembering her past and like hearing the sermons that her father would give, like that stuff I was kind of not so much into. I guess because that's the portion of the movie that's like, hey, we're a horror movie, so we're going to do creepy horror things. And it didn't really feel like it was, I don't know, as relevant to what the actual overall point of the movie was as the other stuff.
I mean, I like that stuff. It worked for me. I think because I do find it kind of like creepy and eerie, but I do wish like there was a different outcome for it. Like I don't really like the I agree with you. I don't like the idea of if the movie did actually go with hey, they died in their sleep from the gas and they're all dead now. I don't like that idea. But I don't like the kids doing it all themselves either. So I still like this like middle portion, but I do wish there was a different outcome for it. I don't know necessarily what the outcome would have been. I don't necessarily need it to be something like supernatural, but yeah, I just don't really like where they went with it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad there was no supernatural. I was actively like against the idea of there being supernatural stuff. Because to me, like the movie, like see once like they get to the point where Grace has got the gun out, and because I thought the moment where the kids just say, you know what, we have to just go. We have to go, because they see Grace like kneeling on like the like next to the fire, and she's like putting her knees on the hot like metal or whatever it is, or the burning clothes. Like the kids eventually decide to run, and like even though they're kids, like the son, Jaeden is just like, you know what? I'm just going to try and drive us out of here. Let's just go. Let's just take the car and try and go. Which, I mean, that's actually after the dad gets out, because obviously the car's not there. But I actually thought that the moment with her walking out with the gun to them sitting in the car, it felt more like the start of the movie to me, where the direction was so on point. And I guess because I think at that point it switched back to being from the perspective of the kids, because once she goes proper crazy, then we are from the perspective of the kids again. And I think it's a really interesting idea that it switches to her for the middle of the movie, because it's going to be about her going mad and what drives her mad and how unjustifiable it is and how they've kind of done it to her. But at the same time, the movie works at its best, I think, when it's from the perspective of the kids, both in the start and the end. And I thought her walking out with the gun was really good. Richard come in, seeing her all disheveled and like trying to like talk to her, and she's got the gun in her hand. And she first of all, she tries to shoot herself, and it just clicks, right? The chamber's out, because it's an old gun. It's an old, 6-shooter kind of gun. It's a revolver, and then she points it at him, and she does shoot him. She shoots him and he dies. So he's just point blank. That's him dead. And the kids watch their dad die, and like they have. And again, I think you could almost take this as a metaphor as well. Like the idea that they weren't willing to let their dad move on and give like this new family a chance, so they kind of just killed any future that he had. Like, because they did this, they drove her to this kind of thing. So there's some subtext there. But once she has the kids, because they don't manage to drive away, despite their efforts, she has them like in the dining room, then the dining table, and they're sitting there, and she puts the tape over their mouths. The end of the movie is her putting the tape over their mouths, saying "sin" on both of them, and she's got it on her own mouth as well, basically implying that she's about to like, make them commit suicide or kill them outright and then commit suicide herself. So that's a pretty dark ending. It's a very grim ending. There's no happiness here.
And then there's they show her putting the tape over their mouth, but then does one quick shot of the gun on the table. So part of me does wonder if, like, I don't know, if Aiden can get the gun in time, if there's still hope for him or something. I don't know.
mean, maybe. I think at this point I was just like, no, there's no happy ending here, because
it's a dark movie for sure.
This is a movie where they've driven this woman to the point of what they kind of feared her to be in the first place, and so it's one of those things where I don't necessarily sympathize with the kids once
sure
they're being hunted essentially at the end, because this is their fault, but it is effective in a suspenseful way, when they're trying to get away from her and she's following with the gun. So I don't know, that stuff worked better for me, because it felt like it was more rooted in the context of what the movie was actually doing and saying, and it felt like it was directed in the same style as the opening, where the direction made a lot of sense to me. When it was her kind of stumbling around the snow and she's like having hallucinations of this building and her father watching her from the window, that stuff was just making me kind of like, I was kind of, it was making me drone out a little bit.
I don't know, I kind of like how like freaky it is, and I don't know, like, I mean, I feel like it still has like a place in the movie, because she's obviously being driven to insanity, so it would make sense that she's starting to see these things and I don't know, go through these motions. So that stuff didn't really bother me. If anything, I kind of liked because I do think they are kind of creepy and eerie. Like there's a sense of like dread and kind of like otherworldliness to them, which I like, and and I think they are still like directed pretty well and everything.
So interestingly as well, I was just looking this up because I wanted to confirm that it was. So the father in the movie is actually her real father. The actor.
The actress?
Yeah, like Riley's father, Danny, is the guy who's playing her father in this.
Wait. Wait, who, Riley's father? Wait, which one was Riley?
Grace.
Okay. Oh, is Riley her, like, the actress's name?
Yes, Grace. So okay. Riley Keough, who plays Grace, her father, Danny Keough, plays the cult leader dude in this.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. That's pretty cool. I did not know that.
I thought that was a really simple bit of trivia, but it ended up being really complicated to actually explain. But yes, so it's a real father-daughter thing, bizarrely.
Cool. Don't
know how that ended up happening, but yeah. yeah, I mean, I dig the opening 30 minutes a lot, and I dig the ending for the most part. I don't like it as much as the opening 30 minutes. It's almost like a victim of like having to be like a horror movie in a weird way, where like it almost would have just been as good to like. I think just the stuff that it was kind of like trying to like tempt us into thinking it was doing in that middle section just weren't what I wanted the movie to do, and it was less enjoyable for me because of that.
So it was the directors are also the writers, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like I really like these directors, but I just wonder if maybe I'd prefer to see them maybe try to tackle someone else's script, because because I think like the big thing that they do well is like they're able to have this kind of tone and atmosphere to their things, and obviously they can like have like really pretty shots and they know when things should be subdued and when like things can pop and everything, but yeah it and again, if they if they are the same people for Good Night Mommy too, it's kind of like a similar feeling where I do like the direction and the look of that film, but some of the story elements I'm not crazy about. So I just wonder if if they would tackle someone else's script, if that would be better.
Yeah, no, maybe a case of that. For sure. Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating because it like the opening like 20-30 minutes made me think this might be amazing. Like I was genuinely thinking, this might end up being like a modern masterpiece if this keeps up the whole time.
Yeah.
To a satisfying conclusion that ties it all together, but unfortunately, it didn't really have that. It kind of. It's not even like it was just the ending that it kind of flubbed. It was actually flubbing it earlier for me, which is a shame because there's a lot of skill on display here, and there's a lot of things to like about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to see what other people think. For sure.
I think it is like an interesting movie to discuss for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a bummer. I think maybe for different reasons, but I think ultimately we're kind of on the same page. Yeah, it's because I think you bring up a good point when you talk about skill. I think there is evidence that there's like a lot of skill in this movie. Like there's things they can do really well. Like when it is firing on all cylinders, you do get that sense of like, okay, this is this year's Hereditary or Get Out or whatever. Like like every year there's like usually a couple of like one or two critically acclaimed horror movies that everyone is kind of like, oh shit, like this is like a masterpiece. And there's parts of this movie where it seems like it could be getting to that, and then there's parts that I wouldn't say are like horrible. Like there's never any part of it that's like, oh, this is awful, or oh, this part really sucks. But it's just parts that kind of take it down from that level of what could be a a new classic to just like, okay, it's just another horror movie this year.
It sounds so defeated. So defeated at the end of that. I guess we'll rate the movie.
Well, one of the just a quick scene, like not that's like super important, but just like another super awkward part of the movie is when they're like talking about like Christmas presents, and they're like, oh, you want to see the present we made for our dad?
Oh yeah.
And then it's a whole video of the mom.
Yes. Just how much of a happy family life it was beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said about like the sin that she feels that she's committed is related to the death of the mom and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's frustrating because there's elements of it that are so good, and then stuff that I just don't like that much, and it's a shame because it really could have been something special if it had stuck to kind of the standard that I felt in that opening like 20-30 minutes. But that is the Lodge. We'll rate this bad boy then. Tim, what are you giving the Lodge out of 10?
I'm still gonna give it a pretty high score. So I think I'm gonna go with a 7, which because again, I really like so much of this movie, and most of it, it's just that, like, one story element. Really, that's the only thing that kind of brings it down for me. But yeah, I mean, if maybe it had a more satisfying conclusion to that, I could easily see this being like, 8.5 even. But unfortunately, I'm just gonna leave it at 7, which I still think is, like, really good. But yeah, I think frustrating, like you said, is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to mirror that and also say 7, which is to say I think overall it is good. It's kind of an
Yeah,
uneven good. It's an uneven good because like
that's a good way to put it.
you
Yeah.
know there's portions of the film that feel like a 9, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there's portions for me that feel like more like they're a 6 or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think yeah. So the Lodge, I mean, it gets a 7 out of 10 from both of us. So your mileage may vary. Definitely, it's one that's probably worth checking out and seeing how you
For
feel
sure.
about it yourself. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we land on it. So yeah. So if you made it this far, if you got to the end of the review here, put the word. I can't think of one for this on. Put the word.
Repent.
Yeah, there you go. Put the word repent in the comments. There you go. Also, Tim has to do his pose here, so I'm going to say 3,
Yeah.
2, 1, and say pose, and then Tim's going to. So, Tim, lean back, make sure your head's not cut off at the top of the frame. All right. 3, 2, 1, pose. I'll do. All right. You can let us know what you think of the Lodge in the comments, of course. You can like is really important on YouTube. It lets the algorithm know that you think we're worth recommending. And it's the easiest free way to support everything we do. Of course, we mentioned patreon.com/MailFuzzTV earlier for the financial way you can support us for as little as $1 per month. So go and have a look at that. Get us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight for updates and shenanigans and weird Tim comments. In fact, I'm mad at Tim this week because someone asked on Twitter, like not even us directly, but someone said, "Hey, what's a horror movie you have to go back to?" And Tim responded using the Screams After Midnight account with a gif of the boy. And then this account responded saying, "Oh yeah, that's a great one." Tim's starting dialects with people thinking that we support the boy and we don't. All right, that is not the official stance of Screams After Midnight.
Hey, do what you can.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so go check out the Twitter. I think that's everything I need to tell you. Seems like
Sounds
everything.
about right.
Yeah. I think we're good. All right, that's been The Lodge. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.